Welcome back to the Star Trek Critic, where each episode is graded like a school project, starting with 100 points, then 1 point deducted for each plot hole, technical or continuity error, set design, and anything else I can think of. And as usual, most everything here is still photos to prevent copyright claims. Today's episode is The Gamesters of Triskelion, my sister's favorite of the 79. According to the stardate, this episode takes place about a week before Metamorphosis, and there isn't enough time between the end of this episode and the beginning of the events of that episode, so the first point is lost for a stardate overlap. The plot. Gamblers kidnap Kirk, Uhura, and Chekhov to bet on in gladiator games, and you know what that means?
You like movies about gladiators?
Look closely. Gamma 2 is an automated communication station, and a good hacker, such as 3 brains in a jar, would be able to get personal information of crew beaming down and spaceships arriving, any information of the ship's schematics where you can find a weakness. So, this is actually a prime spot for the Gamesters to kidnap Starfleet crew. Spock must be preoccupied right now, since usually he would say something about a comment like "mind the store." And this is the one episode out of the 79 where you see Lieutenant Uhura perform the Picard maneuver. Wouldn't it be more practical for the ground crew to be already in the transporter room instead of flying the ship? So 1 more point is lost for poor planning. Which makes you also wonder, why is the chief engineer operating the transporter? This is one of the rare times where Scotty and Spock get into the correct terminology game. Spock is just pissed because he forgot to say something to Kirk about minding the store. This looks like a good idea. This isn't fair. Uhura gets 2 opponents, but Kirk and Chekhov only get 1. What's up with that? The next point is lost because Uhura's tunic is too short. The Thralls win. Is this the only fight scene before the opening credits? The next point is taken since Kirk's captain's log is again talking down to the audience. And how is he recording it? Here is Galt. The sight of him is so terrifying, Kirk has to let out a fart. Galt, Master Thrall. He used to be a DJ. Looks like Kirk is getting his jaw relocated. If you notice, they really only spend a few minutes hanging on the wall. Why didn't they just take him straight to the cells? Look closely. The first thing Chekhov does when he's free is perform the Picard maneuver. Now, back on the Enterprise, I'm not going to take a point for Spock's wrinkled shirt, but I will take a point because the transporter only has 1 set of doors and no cut in the carpet, making it look like a set. Scotty mentions a power surge. Spock says he hopes for a rational explanation. McCoy says hope is a human failing. Is he not a Democrat? Or is that just a setup for Spock to insult humans and bicker with McCoy? Look closely. While Kirk takes this chance to overact in front of the camera, a piece of camera equipment pops up on screen, so -1 point. You gotta admit, the Thrall quarters are pretty clean. They should really plan their escape now when all these guys are gone. With this particular episode, you get the idea that the only reason they're cutting back and forth to the Enterprise is to listen to Spock and McCoy bicker, so I'm going to take 1 point for too much bickering. And of course, McCoy is worried about their atoms being scattered, and Spock starts quoting the odds.
Never tell me the odds.
Does everyone remember the Mary Tyler Moore Show? And Phyllis would always talk about her mysterious husband Lars that you never saw.
No, it's Lars, Mary. He's contracted a case of varicella from one of his patients.
Well, here he is. He's Lieutenant Uhura's drill thrall on Triskelion. That's where he's been all this time. But it doesn't look like they're getting along very well, does it? Shauna's approach is different. She's just gonna stare at Kirk until he eats. The next point is lost for a stardate mismatch, since the numbers don't go up that much in just 2 hours. The new ensign makes a discovery so great, it causes Spock to let out a fart. Shout out to a female making the discovery of the Ion Trail, and for her sitting at the helm. Yes! But I do have to take some points here. 1 for Spock not leaving behind a trailing shuttlecraft in case something shows up. Even in Battlestar Galactica they left a Raptor behind. Another point for not calling Starfleet about the whole thing. And another point for following this faint ion trail at warp 2. That's like driving a Ferrari at 55. And Chekhov gets the less than attractive drill thrall Tamun, which may or may not be funny depending on who you are, so this joke is losing its humor over time. But it's still possible Chekhov would have Tamun as a drill thrall. Kirk eats and makes his move at the same time. Even when he's kidnapped, he's a player. And now it's time for the exercise interval. So, more fight scenes. Does it look like the Enterprise is drifting sideways to you? Spock and McCoy bicker some more. This episode has enough fight scenes in it for the rest of the season, so there might be some of those more cerebral episodes coming. But, in a nutshell, Uhura refuses and Kirk fights instead while the gamesters place bets, because the gamesters are simply brains in a jar with nothing to do all day but place meaningless bets. Does this remind you of anyone?
Gus, chumps. I'm nobody's chump.
So you don't believe
Kirk is able to fight with his hands behind his back and make a captain's log at the same time. That's pretty good. Everyone on the side just sits and watches, but those collars prevent you from helping Kirk at all. Provider 1 gets the 3 for 2,000 quatlus. Kirk says they aren't for sale, so they wager some more.
$3,000.
Okay, 3,000 is the quote. Who had 3,000?
Carlton had 2,800. He's the close.
Galt's eyes glow, and now their collars are red. See, if Spock left a search party behind on Gamma 2 like he was supposed to, Scotty and McCoy wouldn't be flipping out about this long trip out into the wilderness.
Slow down. Slow down. Wait a minute. We've covered over 2 miles. Can we take a breather?
Shauna wore out Kirk. Yes! Kirk pries for information on the place and makes his move on Shauna at the same time. I'm sure the gamesters are placing bets on if he scores. Kirk may want sex, but it looks like he's trying to get more information about the providers, but it goes bad.
Stop it.
However, I think one of the gamesters won the bet this time. Shauna is kind of a dingbat, but she has been in captivity for a long time and knows nothing about the world around her. So Galt is kind of a creepy voyeur also. And the providers are kind of pervy voyeurs as well. And he's saying there will be no punishment because the gamesters want to watch them fool around some more. Back on the Enterprise, Scotty and McCoy still badger Spock about going after a hunch, which ironically is a human thing to do. And Spock bases his hunch on logic. And Spock finally says he's sick of listening to them and accuses them of mutiny. Looks like he's as tired of the bickering as we are. This isn't fair at all. Shauna goes to get kissed, and Kirk whacks her. He's lucky the gamesters didn't see that. Chekhov did the same thing, it seems. These doors are super loud.
He's gone to report me. I told him I didn't like the food.
I think Galt was the only one.
Galt catches them pretty quick. They act like these are the only ones that ever tried to escape. In this conversation, Spock says he is going to beam down by himself, which is a horrible idea. There's a perfectly good security team waiting to go with him. But I can't take a point, since it doesn't happen. The gamesters jam the computers. Even they know it's a bad idea. And here Spock talks to McCoy about a Bible story, which is very unusual, but it is slightly possible that he knows about it. It would have been fun to be the stagehand that got to close the doors on them. Here Spock and Kirk get to communicate for a split second, then Kirk manages to challenge the gamesters, and he's successful. As much as I love matte paintings, I have to take a point for them using the one from The Devil in the Dark last year. These brains have evolved from a lower life form over thousands of years. They might have evolved from these people, or they could have evolved from these people. But it's more likely they evolved from these brains, but I think it's more likely they evolved from these brains. Since you see David Warner on the right, and there is a strange connection. Here you see Galt, he is the warden of all the gladiators, and here's David Warner in the same job.
Eventual elimination.
Kirk tries to outthink the three brains. This is the cerebral part of the show that makes up for all the fighting that went on. And he makes a deal with them. If he loses, they get the entire Enterprise crew, and if he wins, not only does the Enterprise go free, the Thralls get free too. I'm not convinced this deal would have gone through, so -1 point for a plot device so Kirk can fight and win. And if he wins, the brains have to give up watching gladiator games and redevelop the planet, much like what these guys were doing. The next point is lost since this scene is too much like the scene in Arena last year, with the Enterprise crew watching the fight like it's a pay-per-view show. And both sides have broken these rules if you look closely in the show. It looks like she forgot who Mr. Spock is. The Thralls aren't that good. Kirk won pretty quick. Now it's Shauna's turn, and she's pissed. Is this the first time a man and woman fight on TV? You'd think after all these years of gladiator training, the Thralls would be better, but they're not that good. Kirk took 4 of them out pretty quick. And he's like, shit, now I'm out of a job. Shauna pulls the collar off and she's like, now what do I do? And the last point is lost since the Enterprise crew doesn't leave a support team to help them adjust. The Thralls will have a tough time and they're going to be lost. And Kirk just leaves them to fend for themselves. Not the right thing to do. Shauna says she wants to go with them, but Kirk says no, and someday you'll understand. I don't think she ever will. She'll be pissed forever. So, who were the gamesters? Jane Ross played Tamoon. Mickey Morton has 70 screen credits, including Mala on the Star Wars Holiday Special. Yeehaw! Steve Sandor played Lars. He trained police dogs in the Air Force and has 60 screen credits to his name. Victoria George played Ensign Haynes, a female at the helm. Angelique Pettyjohn played Shauna. She has 40 screen credits and then some. She also made several adult films. Yes! And Joseph Riskin served in the Navy in World War II and played Galt. Not only does he have 165 screen credits, we are going to see him again on Deep Space Nine as a Klingon, Star Trek Insurrection as a Sona officer, Star Trek Voyager as a Vulcan, and Star Trek Enterprise as a Suliban. He's also in some of the Star Trek video games. The Gamesters of Triskelion in with a decent score of 85%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists, and click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I will see you again soon.